If you've ever blown up the town of Megaton, you've probably noticed that despite all odds, Moira somehow manages to survive, albeit transformed into a ghoul. One could also make the argument that Deputy Weld also manages to survive the blast. Kinda. But what happens if you kill Moira or Deputy Weld before you blow up the town? Will they reappear at the ruins as they normally do? After exploring Megaton's armory, I found that there was a terminal, and this terminal gave the option to disable Deputy Steele, who is inside the armory, as well as Deputy Weld, who is guarding outside. I decided to test out what would happen if I disabled Deputy Weld. Then I talked to Mr. Burke, agreed to blow up the town, slapped the MacGuffin on the bomb in order to arm it, and on my way out of Megaton, I could confirm that Deputy Weld had been disabled. I also looted his guts for good measure to ensure that he wouldn't rise from the dead. Then I went to Tenpenny Tower and blew up Megaton as normal. Upon my return to the ruins, the head, or faceplate, or whatever you want to call it, of Deputy Weld was still there and was active and welcomes me to Megaton and says that the bomb was perfectly safe, even though I had disabled him and looted his guts. But to be fair, maybe someone managed to reactivate him during the time it took me to make it to Tenpenny Tower. But what if, instead of just disabling him, you flat out kill him? And what if you also kill Moira? Will Moira return as a ghoul despite having been killed in her human form? I honestly had no idea, and I also don't know if anyone had ever tested this out before, so I decided to find out. I killed Moira with the old grenade down the pants prank because it's the funniest way to kill someone in Fallout 3, and it's probably what Todd Howard was referring to when he talked about how violence was funny. It also counts as a stealth kill, so if you can manage to pull this off undetected, then you can get away with murder. Ideally, it's best to wait for someone to go to bed, but even though I waited until the wee hours of the night, Moira never went to bed, and it seemed like she was never going to, so I just went ahead and did it anyway. But the guard in her shop saw me do it, and as a result, the entire town turned hostile. As I fled the town, I made sure to also kill Deputy Weld. Not just merely disable him as I had done previously, but outright kill him. Then I ran to get out of sight of the angry people of Megaton and hid until they eventually gave up their pursuit. Then I fast-traveled to Tenpenny Tower, blew up the town again, and came back to the ruins of Megaton. And even though Deputy Weld's head is still active despite being previously killed, I was heartbroken to notice that there was no sign of Moira. I had hoped that she would arise from the dead as a ghoul and be there to greet me, but alas, this was not the case. Which is, to be fair, what you would expect and what makes the most logical sense. But you never know, and that's why I tested this to find out. And anyone out there who may have been curious, now you also know as well. In addition, I would like to point out that all my attempts to find the hobo water beggar named Mickey also failed, so it seems that he also perished in the blast. As you'd expect, unless he happened to wander off at just that precise moment. But given his ill health and the fact he never does anything, I doubt it. The corpse of the giant ant is still there in front of the town, however, and trade caravans still stop outside these ruins as if the town still existed. Why they would do this when the town no longer exists makes no sense. They certainly can no longer restock their water bags and bottles with Megaton's water that is inferior to that of neighboring Springvale. So why do they still come here? Despite the close proximity to the nuclear explosion, the nearby town of Springvale remains completely unscathed. I even checked to see if Sarah Silver would have some sort of unique dialogue to comment on that mega explosion that should have wiped her out, but she has no dialogue whatsoever to say about it. And the raiders inside Springvale Elementary still loiter about, and they seem completely unaffected by it as well. The mole rats and vicious dogs located behind Megaton are another story, however. They are dead, and their corpses can be found strewn about where they once had lived. Whether these carrion eaters will eventually respawn after a certain number of days, I cannot say, but what I can say is that the summary executions carried out by Lucas Sims' Wasteland Justice shall never more supply this spot with fresh human meat for scavengers such as these to feast upon.